My name is Allison Mitchell, 32 years old, and I still remember the exact shade of red my sister Rebecca's lips were when she smirked at me that day. "The board picked me as CEO because you're too ambitious," she said, leaning across my desk. I simply replied, "Congrats." What she never suspected was that for the past year, I had been meticulously planning my exit strategy. While she was busy playing corporate politics, I was building the foundation of what would become her biggest competition. Sisters can be your greatest allies or your worst enemies. In my case, Rebecca was both. Before I dive deeper into the story of betrayal and redemption, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever dealt with family drama in business, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like mine. Rebecca is 5 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, she was the perfect daughter. While I was building circuit boards in our basement at age 12, she was winning debate competitions and being featured in the local newspaper. Our parents, Linda and Thomas Mitchell, founded Mitchell Technologies in the early 90s when personal computers were becoming household staples. They created software for small businesses, and our childhood was filled with dinner conversations about market growth and emerging technologies. Our home in Seattle's suburbs was comfortable but never flashy. Mom and Dad believed in practical luxury, investing in education rather than material things. They built their business on integrity and innovation, values they tried to instill in both of us. But somehow, Rebecca and I interpreted those values very differently. I remember my 8th grade science fair vividly. I had developed a primitive app that could track household energy usage before such things were common. I spent months coding after school while Rebecca was away at college. When she came home for spring break and saw my project, she was genuinely impressed. "This could actually be marketable, Allie," she said, examining my code. I felt proud that my big sister recognized my work. The next morning, I overheard her on the phone with Dad, suggesting improvements to my project and discussing how it could potentially fit into Mitchell Tech's product line. At the science fair, when the judges came around, Rebecca appeared beside me, smoothly explaining our concept and how we had developed it together during her break from Wharton. She didn't explicitly take credit, but she certainly didn't correct the judges when they praised her mentorship. I won first place, but the victory felt hollow. "That's business, Allie," she told me afterward when I confronted her. "Good ideas need good presentation. You're brilliant with technology, but you need me to help people see that." At 14, I wasn't equipped to argue with her logic. Instead, I internalized a valuable lesson: document everything, trust selectively. When college application time came, Rebecca had already graduated from Wharton with honors and was working her way up at a prestigious consulting firm in New York. Our parents naturally assumed I would follow her path. Instead, I chose Stanford's engineering program. Mom worried I was making a mistake, pursuing the technical side rather than business leadership. "Engineering graduates work for business graduates, honey," she said with concern. "Or they build things business people can't imagine," I replied. Those 4 years at Stanford shaped me profoundly. While Rebecca cultivated connections with industry leaders and potential investors, I immersed myself in coding, design thinking, and product development. I built friendships with brilliant minds who valued creation over competition. My roommate Caitlin became my best friend and later, my first employee. We stayed up late discussing how technology could solve real problems, not just generate profit. When my parents decided to retire in 2016, they called both Rebecca and me home for a transition plan. Mitchell Tech had grown to a respectable mid-sized company with about 60 employees and a loyal client base. Rebecca had left her consulting job to join the family business 3 years earlier, handling client relations and marketing. I came on board after graduation, leading product development. Initially, our different strengths complemented each other well. I developed a machine learning algorithm that helped small businesses predict inventory needs, cutting costs significantly. Rebecca packaged and sold it beautifully, doubling our client base in 18 months. Our parents beamed with pride at how we'd modernized their legacy. You two are unstoppable together, Dad said at their retirement party. Linda and I built this company on dreams and hard work, but you'll take it to places we never imagined. Mom wiped away tears as she handed each of us a small box containing identical gold keys to the office, a symbolic gesture of equal partnership. For the first year, that partnership functioned surprisingly well. I led the technical team in developing innovative solutions, while Rebecca managed business operations. We had different offices, different teams, and different responsibilities. When conflicts arose, we established a rule to discuss them only during scheduled meetings, never at family dinners. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. As the company grew, so did the complexity of our operations. Rebecca suggested bringing in outside investors to fund expansion, which made sense logically but changed our company culture. New board members brought corporate expectations and quarterly pressure. Our once familial atmosphere became more formal, with departments competing for resources rather than collaborating naturally. What I didn't realize was how Rebecca portrayed our roles to these new board members. While I was deep in development mode, working directly with our engineering team on a revolutionary new platform, she was shaping a narrative about our leadership dynamic, one that would ultimately give her the leverage she needed. The power struggle began subtly. My team had developed a cloud-based security system that major industry publications were calling revolutionary and years ahead of competitors. We were fielding calls from Fortune 500 companies interested in enterprise contracts. This success should have been celebrated across the company. But Rebecca seemed increasingly threatened by the attention our technical achievements were receiving. In management meetings, she began questioning development timelines and budgets that had previously been approved. The board is concerned about how much we're investing in R&D versus immediate revenue opportunities, she'd say, though when I asked which board members specifically had these concerns, her answers were vague. I was working 80-hour weeks refining our product line while preparing an expansion plan that would include opening a second office in Austin. The engineering talent pool there was tremendous, and several key potential hires were already expressing interest. I compiled comprehensive projections, risk assessments, and phased implementation strategies for the board meeting scheduled for March 15th. 3 days before the meeting, I noticed something odd. Margaret from accounting, usually friendly and forthcoming, seemed uncomfortable when I asked about the updated financial reports I needed for my presentation. I thought you knew, she said hesitantly. Rebecca already collected everything for the board packets. They went out yesterday. I was confused since we had always reviewed materials together before distribution. When I checked my email, there was indeed a message from Rebecca sent at 11:30 p.m. the previous night, made some last-minute adjustments to the board materials based on feedback from James and Diana. No substantial changes to your section. See you Thursday. James and Diana were our newest board members, representing our largest outside investors. I had no idea Rebecca had been meeting with them privately. The morning of the board meeting, I arrived early to find Rebecca already there, chatting comfortably with all 7 board members. Coffee cups suggested they'd been there a while. Rebecca smiled warmly. Allie, perfect timing. We were just discussing the quarterly projections. During the meeting, everything felt choreographed. When I presented my expansion plan, I noticed several board members exchanging glances. Diana asked pointed questions about whether engineering could maintain quality with a divided team across 2 locations. James expressed concerns about the timing given market uncertainties that hadn't been on anyone's radar in previous discussions. Then Rebecca smoothly transitioned to her presentation. While I fully support my sister's technical vision, I've prepared an alternative growth strategy that addresses the concerns raised. She unveiled a completely different plan, one focusing on expanding our sales team and pursuing acquisition opportunities rather than organic growth. Her slides included financial models I'd never seen and quotes from potential partners I didn't know we were in discussions with. This approach leverages our current success without the risks of geographic expansion, she concluded. It's more conservative but offers more predictable returns. The vote was 5-2 in favor of Rebecca's plan. Only my parents' friends on the board, Harold and Esther, sided with my proposal. As if that wasn't stunning enough, Diana then brought up an item not on the agenda. Given the direction we're taking, the board has been discussing leadership structure, she said. We believe Mitchell Tech would benefit from clearer lines of authority, with a single CEO rather than the current co-leadership model. Harold frowned. This wasn't scheduled for discussion today. Nevertheless, James interjected, it's a timely consideration. We've prepared a brief on recommended corporate structure. The brief, which appeared immediately on our tablets, suggested reorganizing with Rebecca as CEO and me as Chief Technology Officer. The rationale cited my invaluable technical expertise, but noted the company needed unified business leadership focused on investor returns. After a discussion that felt entirely performative, the board voted with the same 5-2 split. Just like that, I was no longer an equal leader in the company I had helped rebuild. I maintained my composure throughout, asking clarifying questions about reporting structures and budget authority. Inside, I felt like I was watching our parents' legacy being reshaped into something unrecognizable. After the meeting, Rebecca found me in my office. I was staring out the window at the Seattle skyline, trying to process what had happened. This is for the best, Allie, she said, leaning against my desk. The board picked me as CEO because you're too ambitious with your technical visions. They need someone who understands business realities. Congrats, I replied simply, turning to face her with a neutral expression that revealed none of the turmoil I felt inside. She seemed almost disappointed by my calm response. Perhaps she'd expected tears or anger, some emotional reaction she could use to further characterize me as unsuitable for leadership. Instead, she got nothing that could be weaponized. We'll talk about transition details tomorrow, she said before leaving. I still want you involved in all major decisions. After she left, I sat motionless for nearly an hour. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it cut to the core of our relationship. While I had been transparent with my plans and achievements, she had been orchestrating my demotion behind the scenes. The sister who once told me I needed her to help people see my brilliance had now used that same brilliance as justification to push me aside. That night, I drove to the waterfront and walked along Elliott Bay until nearly midnight. The cool March air cleared my head as I processed my options. I could fight the decision, appeal to my parents to intervene, or accept my new role and make the best of it. Or I could do something else entirely. Something Rebecca would never see coming. As I watched the ferries crossing the dark water, their lights creating paths that disappeared into the distance, I made my decision. If Rebecca thought my ambition was a liability, she had no idea what I was truly capable of when properly motivated. That night marked the beginning of what I now call my awakening. Sitting in my apartment overlooking Lake Union, I pulled out a fresh notebook, not a digital document that could be monitored or accessed remotely, and began mapping out possibilities. If Rebecca wanted to run Mitchell Tech her way, perhaps it was time for me to build something entirely my own. I started researching emerging markets that Mitchell Tech wasn't addressing. Our core business focused on established small to mid-sized companies, but there was an untapped frontier in sustainability technology for the residential sector. While companies were rushing to serve commercial buildings, few were creating accessible solutions for homeowners wanting to reduce their carbon footprint while saving money. It was 3 a.m. when I identified the fatal flaw in Rebecca's business strategy. She was so focused on immediate returns and traditional growth that she was overlooking the massive cultural shift toward environmental consciousness. Mitchell Tech's client acquisition was becoming more expensive each quarter because we were fighting in an increasingly crowded space. Meanwhile, the sustainability sector was wide open with minimal competition. By sunrise, I had the skeleton of a business plan. I would need funding, a team, and time to develop proprietary technology. Most importantly, I would need absolute secrecy until I was ready to launch. Over the next 2 weeks, I accepted my demotion with such grace that Rebecca seemed almost disappointed. I reorganized my department according to her specifications, attended executive meetings with helpful suggestions, and never once mentioned the board decision. Meanwhile, I was setting up confidential meetings with potential investors. My first meeting was with Sophia Lawson, an angel investor known for backing female founders in tech. We met at a small coffee shop in Bellevue, far from our usual business circles. "So you want to compete with your family's company?" she asked directly after I presented my concept. "Not compete. Serve an adjacent market they're ignoring," I clarified. "Mitchell Tech has chosen a specific direction that leaves a significant opportunity unaddressed." Sophia studied me for a long moment. "And you're prepared for the personal fallout?" "Family businesses are complicated even without direct competition." I appreciated her directness. "I've considered the personal costs, but I believe in this vision enough to accept them." She didn't commit that day, but introduced me to 3 other potential investors who might be interested. By the end of the month, I had secured tentative commitments for $1.5 million in seed funding, contingent on me leaving Mitchell Tech and presenting a working prototype. My double life had begun. During the day, I performed my CTO duties with diligence. I improved our existing products, managed my team effectively, and attended all required meetings. But I was meticulously documenting all my work, ensuring every line of code I wrote for Mitchell Tech was properly attributed and time-stamped. I had learned from past experiences with Rebecca. Nights and weekends became dedicated to my secret venture. I converted my spare bedroom into a home office with a separate computer system unconnected to any Mitchell Tech networks. I began developing the core algorithms for what would eventually become Home Harmony, a smart home system that would optimize energy usage while learning household patterns. Legal protection became my priority. I consulted discreetly with Patricia Garcia, a tech intellectual property lawyer recommended by Sophia. Patricia helped me navigate the complex terrain of developing new technology while still employed elsewhere. "Your employment contract gives Mitchell Tech rights to anything you develop related to their business," she explained. "You need to ensure your new concept is distinctly different and documented as developed on your own time with your own resources." Following her advice, I kept meticulous logs of when I worked on my project versus company time. I used separate devices purchased with personal funds and worked from coffee shops using public Wi-Fi rather than my home network to maintain separation. The most challenging aspect was identifying which team members I might eventually recruit without alerting Rebecca. Caitlin, my Stanford roommate who now led our user experience team, was my first confidant. We had history and trust that predated Mitchell Tech. Over lunch at a park 2 blocks from the office, I shared my plans. "I've been waiting for you to make this move," she said, surprising me. "Rebecca's been systematically taking credit for your innovations for years. The question isn't whether I'll join you, it's when do we start?" Her immediate support brought tears to my eyes. Over the following weeks, I had similar conversations with 4 other key team members: Marcus from engineering, Diane from product management, Trevor from sales, and Raj from development. Each conversation was held off-site, and each person agreed to maintain absolute secrecy while continuing to perform their Mitchell Tech duties impeccably. My personal life suffered under the weight of my secret. Jason, my boyfriend of 3 years, noticed the change immediately. We had been discussing moving in together, but suddenly I was unavailable most evenings and weekends, offering vague explanations about work projects. "You're different since the reorganization," he said one night during our rare dinner together. "I thought you'd be upset about Rebecca becoming CEO, but instead you're just absent." I wanted to tell him everything. But Jason worked for a venture capital firm that occasionally dealt with companies in our sector. Any leak, even unintentional, could be catastrophic. Instead, I gave him the only truth I could. "I'm reevaluating my career path. I need some time to figure things out." 2 weeks later, he moved his things out of the drawer I had given him in my bedroom. "Call me when whatever this is past," he said. The door closed behind him with a quiet click that somehow hurt more than a slam would have. My health began suffering too. I lost 7 pounds in the first month of my double life. Dark circles became permanent fixtures under my eyes. I started experiencing tension headaches that no amount of ibuprofen could touch. Caitlin noticed and insisted I schedule at least 1 day a week for rest, but there was too much to accomplish and too little time. Financially, I was taking an enormous risk. My savings, once earmarked for a down payment on a house, were rapidly diminishing as I purchased equipment and software licenses. The investor commitments were still only promises, contingent on deliverables I hadn't yet created. Despite these challenges, by the 3-month mark, I had a functioning prototype of the Home Harmony Hub. It wasn't pretty, a circuit board connected to various sensors housed in a 3D printed case, but it worked. The system could track energy usage from multiple sources, learn patterns of consumption, and make adjustments that reduced overall usage by an average of 27% in my apartment testing environment. The night I achieved that milestone, I stood alone in my kitchen, watching the system automatically adjust my thermostat and lighting based on my typical evening patterns. For the first time since the board meeting, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. This was just the beginning. 6 months into my secret venture, Rebecca's suspicion began to grow. I had become too effective at compartmentalizing my life, too measured in my responses during meetings, too accepting of decisions I would have previously challenged. The sister who had grown up competing with me recognized something had changed. Her first approach was casual. "You've been working late a lot," she mentioned, appearing unexpectedly in my office doorway one evening around 8 p.m. I was actually reviewing Mitchell Tech code, but quickly closed several other tabs on my browser. "The Anderson project needs these security updates by Friday," I replied, which was true but not the complete picture of my late nights. Rebecca lingered, glancing around my office. "You seem different lately." "More, I don't know, detached." She perched on the edge of my desk, adopting the big sister posture from our childhood. "Is this still about the CEO thing? Because I thought we were past that." "We are," I assured her, maintaining eye contact. "I'm just focused on delivering results in my area." The next week, I discovered someone had attempted to access my secured development server. Our IT director, Brandon, mentioned it casually. "Weird thing yesterday. There was an admin-level access attempt to your private development environment from the executive floor. Probably just a system glitch, but I thought you should know." Brandon had been with the company since our parents' time and maintained a neutral stance in company politics. His warning wasn't explicit, but it was clear. Someone with executive privileges, likely Rebecca, had tried to see what I was working on. I increased my security measures and became even more careful about my work separation. I moved all sensitive Home Harmony materials to encrypted cloud storage unconnected to Mitchell Tech and accelerated my timeline. If Rebecca was getting suspicious, I had less time than I thought. Her next move was to begin questioning my team members. Raj texted me one afternoon. "CEO just had casual lunch with me. Lots of questions about what you're working on after hours. Said she's concerned about your work-life balance. Told her you seem fine to me. Watch your back." Similar reports came from others on my team. Rebecca was systematically investigating me, but carefully, always under the guise of concern. Meanwhile, she implemented new company policies requiring approval for any work conducted outside normal business hours and mandatory reporting of all code repositories. The confrontation I had been anticipating finally arrived on a rainy Tuesday in October. I was meeting with my development team about a client implementation when Rebecca appeared with James from the board. "Sorry to interrupt," she said with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "James and I need to discuss something urgent with Allison. Can we use this room?" After my team filed out, Rebecca closed the door and turned to face me. On the conference table, she placed a printed email, an exchange between me and Sophia Lawson discussing potential office spaces for a new venture. "Care to explain this?" Rebecca asked. Her voice was calm, but her fingers tapped an agitated rhythm on the tabletop. I studied the email, noting it had been sent to my personal account. "I'm curious how you obtained access to my personal communications." James cleared his throat uncomfortably. "That's not the issue at hand, Allison." "Actually, it's exactly the issue," I countered, remaining seated while they both stood. "That email was sent to my personal account, accessed on my personal device, regarding activities conducted on my own time." Rebecca's composure slipped slightly. "You're developing a competing business while employed as our CTO. That's a clear violation of your contract and your fiduciary responsibility. Is it? I opened my laptop and pulled up a document. This is my employment contract. Section 8. 3 specifically states that I'm prohibited from developing competing technology or soliciting Mitchell Tech clients or employees during my employment. I've done neither. Home Harmony is clearly competitive with Mitchell Business Solutions, James argued. Home Harmony focuses on residential energy management. Mitchell Tech serves business clients exclusively and has explicitly rejected entering the residential market 3 times in strategy meetings. I pulled up the minutes from those meetings, which I had carefully saved. In fact, Rebecca, you personally called the residential market too fragmented and low margin in this email from February. Rebecca's face flushed. She hadn't expected me to be so prepared. This isn't just about legal technicalities, Allie. This is about loyalty. About family. Loyalty. I finally stood, my calm facade cracking slightly. Was it loyalty when you orchestrated my demotion without warning? When you took credit for my innovations repeatedly? When you accessed my personal communications illegally? The conference room fell silent. James looked increasingly uncomfortable. I think, he said finally, we should continue this discussion with legal counsel present. That won't be necessary, I replied, closing my laptop. I've been planning to have this conversation anyway, just not quite so soon. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. This is my resignation, effective immediately. All Mitchell Tech intellectual property has been properly documented and transitioned. My personal belongings will be removed by end of day. Rebecca stared at the envelope but didn't take it. You're making a mistake, Allie. You can't build a company from scratch in this market. You need Mitchell Tech's resources and client base. I placed the envelope on the table. That's where you're wrong. I don't need anything from Mitchell Tech, except perhaps the motivation you've provided by underestimating me for years. I walked to the door but paused before opening it. One more thing. I've accepted resignations from 5 team members, effective next Friday. All have provided proper notice and transition plans. None were solicited while I was employed here. I checked my watch, which ends officially in about 30 seconds. The look of shock on Rebecca's face as I walked out was something I'll never forget. Not triumph. I took no pleasure in her distress, but recognition. For perhaps the first time. She was seeing me clearly. Word spread quickly through the office. By the time I reached my desk, Caitlin was already there, along with Marcus, Diane, Trevor, and Raj. So I guess we're doing this now? Caitlin asked with a nervous smile. Apparently so, I replied, beginning to pack my personal items. Anyone having second thoughts? They exchanged glances. Marcus spoke first. We've been ready. Just waiting for you to give the word. As I cleared my office, other team members stopped by. Some were confused. Others supportive, a few angry about the sudden departure. I explained as much as I legally could, thanking each person for what they had taught me. Harold from the board found me as I was packing the last box. His weathered face showed concern. Your parents called me. They're upset. I know, I replied. I'll talk to them tonight. He nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right move. This company stopped being what Thomas and Linda built when we brought in outside money. Too focused on quarterly returns, not enough on innovation. He offered his hand. Good luck, Allison. Show them what you can really do. As I walked through the lobby one final time, carrying a small box of mementos, I saw Rebecca watching from the mezzanine above. Our eyes met briefly. I nodded once, then pushed through the revolving door into the rain. That evening, surrounded by my core team in my apartment, we toasted with cheap champagne to the official beginning of Home Harmony. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, I felt completely aligned with my purpose. The betrayal that had seemed so devastating had actually set me free. We set up our first office in my garage, in what felt like a perfect tribute to tech startup cliches. 5 desks crammed into a space barely large enough for one car, with extension cords snaking across the concrete floor and whiteboards mounted on every available wall surface. Seattle's notorious winter rain drummed constantly on the roof. occasionally leaking through in one corner that we protected with strategically placed buckets. "It's not exactly the Google campus," Caitlin joked as she set up her workstation. "Not yet," I replied, tagging the leaky corner with a post-it that read "Future Meditation Room." Our first week was spent establishing legal foundations. We officially incorporated as Phoenix Innovation Labs, though Home Harmony remained our product name. I finalized the investor agreements, securing the promised $1.5 million in seed funding. With money in our account, we could finally pay ourselves modest salaries and purchase proper equipment. The culture we built was intentionally opposite to what Mitchell Tech had become under Rebecca. We established complete transparency about decision-making and finances. Every team member received equity. We implemented a flat organizational structure where ideas were evaluated on merit rather than who proposed them. Most importantly, we committed to honest attribution of contributions. No one would take credit for another's work. "It feels weird not having to constantly document everything to protect myself," Diane commented one day. "I didn't realize how much energy that was consuming until I stopped doing it." Development challenges surfaced immediately. The prototype I had built worked in my apartment, but scaling it for various home configurations introduced countless variables. Marcus led our hardware team in redesigning the central hub to be more user-friendly and aesthetically pleasing. "People won't adopt technology that's ugly, no matter how well it works," he insisted, sketching sleek designs that looked more like decorative objects than traditional tech. Raj and his software team worked on refining the machine learning algorithms to identify usage patterns more quickly and make smarter adjustments. We needed the system to recognize the difference between regular behavior changes and one-off exceptions. Lowering the heat when no one was home was efficient, but not if it meant returning to a freezing house. We worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week. I converted my living room into a secondary workstation so we could spread out for focused coding sessions. My dining table became our conference room, covered in pizza boxes and coffee cups during brainstorming sessions that often lasted until midnight. The team bonded through this shared adversity. We celebrated small victories enthusiastically, the first time the system correctly predicted a household member's return and adjusted the temperature accordingly. We opened the expensive bottle of Scotch Sophia had given us at our funding celebration. "To knowing what people need before they do," Raj toasted, raising his glass. 4 months in, we had our first working prototype that met my standards for release. It wasn't perfect, but it worked reliably enough to demonstrate to potential partners. The system reduced energy consumption by an average of 32% in our test environments without requiring users to change their behavior significantly. The patent filing process was both expensive and nerve-wracking. We had limited funds, and legal protection was crucial before making our technology public. Patricia guided us through prioritizing which aspects of our technology needed immediate protection versus what could wait. "Focus on your core algorithmic approach," she advised. "That's your true innovation. The hardware configurations can come later." With our patents filed, we prepared for a controlled soft launch. Rather than a splashy public announcement that might attract Mitchell Tech's immediate attention, we approached 3 local home builders specializing in eco-friendly construction. We offered to install Home Harmony systems in their model homes at no cost, allowing potential homebuyers to experience the technology firsthand. Western Sustainable Homes, the largest of the 3 builders, was the first to agree. Their marketing director, Leah, immediately recognized the potential. "This is exactly what our buyers are looking for," she said during the demonstration. "They want environmentally responsible homes without having to micromanage every light switch and thermostat." 2 weeks later, Home Harmony was installed in 5 model homes across Seattle. We didn't brand the installations prominently, just small, elegant, powered by Home Harmony plaques beside the control panels. The strategy was to generate organic interest rather than hype. The industry response exceeded our expectations. Within days, we began receiving calls from other builders and from potential clients who had toured the model homes. A local tech blog ran a small piece titled "Seattle Startup Quietly Revolutionizing Home Energy Management," which was picked up by several larger publications. The article caught Rebecca's attention, as we knew it would. Trevor, who maintained relationships with former colleagues, reported that Mitchell Tech had called an emergency strategy meeting after the article was published. Rebecca had apparently been blindsided by how quickly we had developed a market-ready product. Her response came in the form of a cease and desist letter, claiming our technology infringed on Mitchell Tech patents. Patricia reviewed it and laughed. "This is desperation, not legal strategy," she said. "They're claiming patents that apply to business applications, not residential systems. We'll respond appropriately, but don't lose sleep over this." She drafted a firmly worded response outlining the distinct differences between our technologies and citing the multiple occasions when Mitchell Tech had explicitly rejected entering the residential market. We never heard back on the matter. What Rebecca couldn't do legally, she attempted through market pressure. Mitchell Tech suddenly announced plans to expand into new market segments, including residential applications, though they had no actual product ready. She gave interviews suggesting that established companies were better positioned than and proven startups to deliver reliable home technology. These tactics might have worried me 6 months earlier, but now they only confirmed we were on the right track. Rebecca wouldn't be responding if she didn't see us as a legitimate threat. Our first major client came from an unexpected direction. Jennifer Adams, Sustainability Director for Westlake Hotels, contacted us after seeing Home Harmony in a model home. "We've been looking for exactly this solution for our Seattle property," she explained during our meeting. "We want to market ourselves as the most energy-efficient luxury hotel in the Pacific Northwest, but guest comfort is non-negotiable. The hotel contract would require adapting our technology for commercial use, exactly the space where Mitchell Tech operated." I consulted with Patricia before proceeding. "The contract is for residential-style implementation in hotel rooms, which still falls within your focus area," she advised. "Just ensure the agreement specifically defines these parameters to avoid giving them grounds for litigation." When Jennifer signed the contract for a pilot implementation in 20 rooms, we celebrated with champagne in plastic cups in my garage. 6 months from resignation to first major client, we were ahead of even my ambitious timeline. Media coverage expanded after the Westlake Hotel's announcement. Local business journals ran profiles of our garage startup taking on an established tech firm. Several highlighted the sister versus sister angle, much to my discomfort. I consistently redirected interviews toward our technology rather than family drama. Our focus is on creating solutions that help homeowners live more sustainably without sacrifice, became my standard response to questions about Rebecca. The residential market has been underserved, and we're filling that gap. By our 8th month, we had outgrown my garage. With 7 more team members hired and regular client meetings becoming awkward in my living room, we leased a small office space in South Lake Union. It wasn't fancy: concrete floors, exposed ductwork, and mismatched furniture collected from thrift stores, but it was ours. The day we moved in, I hung a single framed photo, our original team of 6, huddled in my garage on day 1. Exhausted but smiling. "From garage to proper office in 8 months, Caitlin said, standing beside me. "Not bad, Mitchell." I corrected her with a smile. "Not Mitchell Tech. Just Phoenix." Creating my own identity separate from the family name had been one of the most liberating aspects of this journey. Phoenix Innovation Labs was building its reputation on its own merits, not family legacy. As we settled into our new space, I finally felt like we weren't just surviving. We were beginning to thrive. 1 year after my departure, the contrasting trajectories of our companies became increasingly evident. Mitchell Tech was struggling with innovation stagnation, a problem I had predicted but taken no pleasure in seeing materialize. Without strong technical leadership pushing boundaries, they had fallen into the pattern of making incremental improvements to existing products rather than creating truly new solutions. Their quarterly reports, which remained public due to their investor structure, showed concerning trends. Revenue growth had slowed to 3% compared to the previous year's 17%. Their stock price had dropped nearly 15% since my exit. Most tellingly, they had experienced significant turnover, losing not just my core team but several other key engineers and product managers in the months that followed. Trevor maintained friendly connections with former colleagues and regularly updated us. Morale is at an all-time low, he reported after having drinks with Mitchell Tech's marketing director. Rebecca's management style has become increasingly controlling. Every decision requires multiple approvals, and people are afraid to take initiative. This aligned with what I knew of Rebecca's approach under pressure. She had always responded to uncertainty by tightening control rather than encouraging innovation. The more Mitchell Tech struggled, the more she would clamp down, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of decline. Meanwhile, Phoenix was experiencing rapid growth that sometimes felt dizzying. The Westlake Hotel's implementation had been so successful, reducing energy costs by 34% while increasing guest satisfaction scores, that they contracted us to outfit their entire Seattle property in D2 additional locations in Portland and Vancouver. 6 major home builders now included Home Harmony as a premium option in their new constructions. We had developed a direct-to-consumer installation service for existing homes, which had a 3-month waiting list despite minimal marketing. Our team had grown to 50 people, requiring us to lease the remainder of our building's floor. Our success attracted attention from investors. 3 prominent venture capital firms approached us about series of funding, offering terms that would value Phoenix at over $20 million, remarkable for a company barely a year old. After careful consideration and team consultation, we accepted an offer of $12 million from Horizon Ventures, which allowed us to maintain greater control than other options. The funding announcement made headlines in tech publications, several of which specifically noted the contrast with Mitchell Tech's struggling performance. One particularly pointed article in TechCrunch was titled "Phoenix Rises as Mitchell Tech Burns: How Sibling Rivalry is Reshaping Smart Home Technology." Rebecca must have read these comparisons with growing frustration. Mitchell Tech announced a major initiative to develop residential smart home technology, clearly intended to compete directly with Home Harmony. They held a splashy press conference unveiling a prototype that bore striking similarities to our early designs, though without the sophisticated machine learning capabilities that made our system truly effective. The industry collision became unavoidable when both companies were invited to present at GreenTech, the largest sustainable technology conference on the West Coast. We would be showcasing our technologies in booths directly across from each other, and were both scheduled to deliver presentations on the main stage, Rebecca on Thursday afternoon, me on Friday morning. "Are you ready to face her directly?" Caitlin asked as we prepared our presentation. "You haven't been in the same room since you left." "It's not about Rebecca," I replied, though my stomach tightened at the thought. "It's about our technology and vision. That's where my focus needs to be." The conference center was buzzing when we arrived to set up our booth. Home Harmony had evolved significantly from our garage prototype. The hub now featured an elegant minimalist design in recycled aluminum, complemented by nearly invisible sensors that blended with home decor. Our demonstration setup showed real-time energy usage visualization and predictive adjustments based on simulated household patterns. Across the aisle, Mitchell Tech's booth was considerably larger and more elaborate, with professional signage and multiple staff in matching attire. Their prototype was prominently displayed on a rotating pedestal, sleek but conspicuously similar to our early designs. Rebecca was directing the setup, immaculately dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my first month's rent in our office space. Our eyes met briefly as I adjusted our display. She nodded curtly before turning away to speak with her marketing director. The tension was palpable, but we both maintained professional distance. The first day of the conference brought a steady stream of visitors to both booths. Industry professionals, potential clients, and curious competitors all wanted to see the technology created by the feuding sisters. Many visited both displays for comparison, and I overheard frequent comments about the differences in our approaches. Mitchell Tech's system looks more polished, but Home Harmony's actually works better in the demo, one visitor remarked to his colleague. Plus, Phoenix's team can actually explain how the technology works instead of just reciting marketing points. Rebecca's presentation on Thursday was polished and professional. She outlined Mitchell Tech's vision for integrated business and residential solutions that would leverage established enterprise technology for home applications. The subtext was clear. They were the established experts, we were the upstarts. She never mentioned Phoenix by name, but made several references to inexperienced competitors and unproven technology. When question time came, an industry analyst asked directly about the competition with her sister's company. Rebecca's composure flickered momentarily before she responded with a practiced smile. Family businesses often spawn healthy competition. Mitchell Tech welcomes all participants in this growing market. Though we believe our 15 years of experience provides significant advantages over newer entrants. My presentation the following morning took a different approach. Rather than positioning us against competitors, I focused entirely on the problem we were solving and our unique solution. I shared actual data from our implementations, including energy savings percentages and user satisfaction metrics. When asked about Mitchell Tech, I redirected to the broader industry. The sustainability technology sector benefits from diverse approaches. Our focus is specifically on creating systems that learn and adapt to household patterns rather than requiring users to adapt to technology. Different companies will naturally develop different solutions for this complex challenge. The real test came during the conference's culminating event, pitches to JCL Properties, the largest eco-friendly development company in North America. They were planning a 200-home sustainable community and were selecting technology partners for various aspects of the project. Both Mitchell Tech and Phoenix were among 6 companies invited to present our home energy management solutions. Rebecca presented first, showcasing Mitchell Tech's enterprise experience and stability. Her pitch emphasized their longevity, established support infrastructure, and recent expansion into residential applications. It was competent and reassuring, designed to appeal to a large developer's concern for reliability. When my turn came, I took a calculated risk. Rather than a traditional PowerPoint presentation, I demonstrated our technology live, showing how the system had been learning the conference center's patterns over the previous 2 days and had already identified 3 ways to reduce energy consumption without affecting comfort. Home Harmony doesn't just promise future efficiency, I explained. It starts delivering from the moment it's installed and continuously improves as it learns. We're not asking homeowners to change their behavior. We're adapting technology to human needs, not the reverse. The JCL executives were visibly impressed by the practical demonstration. Their sustainability director asked detailed technical questions that I answered directly, occasionally deferring to Raj or Marcus for specific implementation details. The collaborative nature of our team presentation contrasted with Rebecca's solo approach. As we left the presentation room, I found myself face-to-face with Rebecca in the hallway. For a moment, we stood in awkward silence. "Your demo was effective," she said finally, her expression unreadable. "Thank you," I replied. "Your presentation was very polished." Another uncomfortable pause followed before she spoke again. "This rivalry isn't sustainable, Allie. The market isn't big enough for direct competition between us. One company will eventually dominate. Perhaps," I acknowledged. "Or perhaps the market is larger than either of us realizes, with room for different approaches. Not everything has to be a zero-sum game." She shook her head slightly. "That's always been the difference between us. You see collaboration where I see competition." "Both perspectives have value," I said. "It depends on what you're trying to build." We parted without resolution, each returning to our respective teams. A week later, JCL Properties announced they had selected Phoenix Innovation Labs for their sustainable community project. The contract would be worth approximately $3 million and would showcase Home Harmony in their flagship development. The decision sent shockwaves through the industry. Mitchell Tech stock dropped an additional 7% following the announcement, while our valuation soared. Technology publications ran headlines like Phoenix outshines established competitor, and Mitchell Tech loses key contract to founder's sister. What none of these articles captured was the complex emotions behind the professional competition. Every victory for Phoenix came with the knowledge that it potentially hurt not just a competitor, but my sister and my parents' legacy. Success was bittersweet when it came at family expense, regardless of how our professional relationship had deteriorated. That ethical dilemma became even more pronounced when Trevor discovered a significant vulnerability in Mitchell Tech's new residential system during a competitive analysis. Their approach to data security had a fundamental flaw that could potentially allow unauthorized access to home systems. If this gets exploited, it could sink their entire residential division. Trevor explained, "We're legally obligated to our shareholders to use competitive advantages, but this isn't just about business," I finished his thought. "It's about family. Regardless of our differences." The team looked to me for direction. This was the type of vulnerability that competitors typically exploited mercilessly or reported publicly to damage confidence. Either approach could devastate Mitchell Tech's already struggling position. After considerable thought, I made my decision. I wouldn't use this information as a weapon, but I couldn't ignore a security issue that could affect homeowners. I drafted a private letter to Mitchell Tech's security team, anonymized through Patricia to maintain professional distance, detailing the vulnerability and suggesting approaches to address it. "This isn't how business is usually done," Caitlin observed as I sent the letter. "We're not building a usual business," I replied. "We're building one we can be proud of, regardless of the competition." 2 weeks later, Mitchell Tech quietly released a security update addressing the exact vulnerability we had identified. They never acknowledged the source of the information, but the message was received. There were some lines neither of us would cross, regardless of our professional rivalry. The unexpected proposition came on a rainy Tuesday morning in March, almost exactly 2 years after I had walked out of Mitchell Tech. I was reviewing quarterly projections with our finance team when my assistant interrupted. "I'm sorry, Allie, but Rebecca Mitchell is in reception. She doesn't have an appointment, but says it's important." The room fell silent. Rebecca had never visited our offices, and we had maintained careful professional distance since the Green Tech conference 6 months earlier. "Show her to my office," I said after a moment's consideration. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." I found Rebecca standing at my window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. She had lost weight since I'd seen her last, and the confident posture I associated with her seemed diminished somehow. She turned as I entered, her expression uncharacteristically uncertain. "Nice view," she said, gesturing toward the window. "You've done well for yourselves." "Thank you," I replied, offering her a seat at my small conference table rather than across my desk. "What brings you here, Rebecca?" She sat and placed a folder on the table between us. "I'll be direct. Mitchell Tech is struggling. Our last 2 quarters have shown declining revenue, and our residential division has failed to gain traction against home harmony." This wasn't news to me, but hearing her admit it was surprising. "The board is considering strategic alternatives," she continued, her voice carefully controlled, "including potential merger or acquisition options." I sat back, processing her words. "And you're approaching Phoenix as a potential acquirer? Or seeking to be acquired? Either scenario could be on the table." She opened the folder, revealing financial statements. "Our business client base remains valuable, and our enterprise software still has advantages in the commercial space, combined with Phoenix's residential technology and growth trajectory. You're suggesting a merger," I stated flatly. Rebecca nodded. "The preliminary financials make sense. Our companies have complementary strengths and target markets. Together, we could create a comprehensive offering across residential and commercial applications." I studied her carefully. "Why now, Rebecca? Mitchell Tech has rejected collaboration at every turn. You've publicly dismissed our technology and privately attempted to undermine our growth." For a moment, her careful composure cracked. "Because I'm facing reality, Allie. Mitchell Tech is failing under my leadership. I've made strategic errors that have cost us market position and investor confidence." She met my eyes directly. I'm trying to salvage what I can of our parents' legacy before it's too late. The vulnerability in her admission caught me off guard. This wasn't the calculating sister I had grown accustomed to battling. This was someone acknowledging failure and seeking help, something Rebecca had never done in all the years I'd known her. I need time to consider this, I said finally. And I'll need to consult with my team and investors. This isn't a decision I can make unilaterally. Of course, she agreed. Standing to leave. At the door, she paused. For what it's worth, I was wrong about you, Allie. About your ambition, your vision, all of it. You've built something remarkable here. After she left, I sat motionless for nearly an hour, considering the implications of her proposal. The business case was relatively straightforward. A merger could potentially benefit both companies, combining Mitchell Tech's established commercial client base with our cutting-edge residential technology. But the personal and ethical considerations were far more complex. Over the next week, I consulted with everyone whose input I valued. Our leadership team was divided, with some seeing strategic advantages and others concerned about culture clash. Our investors generally favored the opportunity, but respected that the decision carried personal weight beyond financial considerations. Caitlin, who had been with me from the beginning, offered the most insightful perspective over late-night takeout in my office. The question isn't whether this makes business sense, she said. It's whether you can work with Rebecca again without repeating old patterns, and whether Mitchell Tech under her leadership truly aligns with what we've built here. Her words crystallized my thinking. Phoenix had succeeded not just because of our technology, but because of our values, transparency, collaboration, and ethical innovation. Any potential merger would need to preserve these foundations. I spent a weekend developing a detailed proposal with conditions that would protect what we had built while offering Mitchell Tech a path forward. On Monday morning, I called Rebecca and asked her to meet me at a neutral location, the small park near Lake Union where we had occasionally played as children. She arrived precisely on time, dressed more casually than I had seen her in years. We walked silently along the water's edge before finding a bench overlooking the lake. I've considered your proposal, I began, watching sailboats drift across the water. A merger could potentially benefit both companies, but only under specific conditions. I outlined my terms. Phoenix's leadership team would maintain control of product development and company culture. Mitchell Tech's commercial division would continue under experienced management, but would adopt our transparency and attribution practices. Most significantly, the combined company would require new executive leadership. Neither Rebecca nor I would serve as CEO. You're asking me to step down completely, she said quietly when I finished. I'm suggesting we both find roles that leverage our strengths without recreating our conflicts, I clarified. You excel at strategic partnerships and investor relations. I thrive in product vision and team development. Neither of us needs to be CEO for the company to succeed. Rebecca was silent for several minutes, looking out over the water. When she finally spoke, her voice had an unfamiliar gentleness. 2 years ago, I would have rejected these terms outright. My pride wouldn't have allowed it. She turned to face me. But I've learned some difficult lessons about leadership and legacy. Mitchell Tech was our parents' creation, and my attempts to control it completely have nearly destroyed it. It wasn't just about control, I offered, finding unexpected compassion. You were trying to protect and grow something important. Your methods were flawed, but your intention wasn't wrong. A sad smile crossed her face. You're being generous. I pushed you out because I felt threatened by your abilities. I've had 2 years to recognize that mistake. The conversation that followed was perhaps the most honest we had ever shared. We discussed our childhood competition, our different interpretations of our parents' values, and how those differences had shaped our approaches to business and leadership. For the first time in our adult lives, we were speaking as equals rather than rivals. 3 months later, after extensive negotiation and planning, Phoenix Innovation Labs and Mitchell Tech announced their merger into Harmony Technologies. The press release emphasized the complementary strengths of both companies and outlined a new leadership structure with Brian Winters, a respected industry veteran, as CEO. Rebecca became Chief Strategy Officer, focusing on commercial partnerships, while I took the role of Chief Innovation Officer, leading product development across both residential and commercial lines. The transition wasn't always smooth. Cultural integration proved challenging, with many Mitchell Tech employees initially resistant to our more collaborative approach. Some team members from both sides chose to leave rather than adapt to the new structure. But gradually, a unified company culture emerged that preserved the best elements of both organizations. 1 year after the merger, Harmony Technologies unveiled its first jointly developed product, an integrated energy management system that seamlessly connected home and work environments. Users could maintain consistent preferences across locations while optimizing energy usage in both spaces. The market response exceeded even our optimistic projections. Rebecca and I established a new professional relationship based on mutual respect for our different strengths. We maintained some personal distance, both recognizing that our sibling relationship would always be complicated by our history. But we found a functional partnership that allowed both of us to contribute without direct conflict. At our parents' anniversary dinner, 6 months after the merger announcement, our father raised his glass in a toast to my daughters, who took different paths to the same destination. You've each built something remarkable and, together, something even greater. My journey from betrayal to redemption taught me that ambition itself was never the problem. Rebecca had been wrong about that from the beginning. The problem had been our different definitions of success and our failure to communicate honestly about our visions. Her competitive drive and my innovative thinking had each created value, but only when we stopped trying to undermine each other could that value be fully realized. The truth is, neither of us would have built our separate empires without the other pushing us forward. Rebecca's betrayal forced me to find strength and vision I might never have discovered otherwise. My departure compelled her to confront limitations in her leadership approach that might have remained unchallenged. Sometimes the people who hurt us most also catalyze our greatest growth. The key is channeling that pain into creation rather than destruction, into building rather than tearing down. In the end, ambition without purpose is empty. But purpose-driven ambition can transform both individuals and industries. What about you? Has someone's betrayal ever pushed you to discover strengths you didn't know you had? Or have you found yourself competing with someone who should have been an ally? Share your experience in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of transformation. Remember, sometimes the most painful chapters of our lives become the foundation for our greatest achievements. Thank you for listening to my story.